Hey guys, this is Mr. Bennett, and this is Biology Unit 6. This is our first video in a little while, and we'll be talking about the cell cycle and meiosis. Now I know that in class you've already taken some notes on this, so what I want you to do with this video is I want you to go through your notes as we talk about each topic. And I want you to make sure that you have complete details. I want you to make sure that your information is clear to you. So as you go through, I want you to add to your notes. I want you to improve. I want you to fix. I want you to make sure that you have the complete idea. So starting off, the first topic I want to talk about is the cell cycle. So looking at your notes on the cell cycle, this is the information that you should have. So you should have some form of diagram that looks like what I have over here. Yours can be broken up a little bit differently, but the general idea is that you have an M, which would be mitosis in this case. You may or may not have cytokinesis. If you do it might be C. Then you'll have G1, S, and G2. So most of you should have these three, and definitely the M. The C might be optional. Now, around the outside of your cell cycle, you should have another kind of ring that goes around the outside, and the first part of it would be interphase, which just goes around from G1, S, and G2. So basically these three phases put together make up interphase. And then you have another little section, and this is titled cell division, and that would be mitosis plus cytokinesis. So let's talk about what this really is. Okay, now that you have your diagram checked off. The cell cycle is really just a repeating cycle of events in the life of a cell. In other words, you have a baby cell. That cell grows up to be a big cell. And then when it's ready, that cell will split up, divide into two baby cells. And then those two baby cells will do exactly what this cell did, and they will grow up to be big cells. And then those cells will go off and divide into baby cells again. Okay, so it's a repeating cycle of events in the life of a cell, hence the cell cycle. Now, interphase, which we mentioned is made up of G1, S, and G2, is just the period between cell divisions. So basically from here to here. Okay, this is interphase. Just from baby cell to adult cell, just before it divides. Now, interphase can be broken up into really three, maybe four parts. Okay, the first part is known as G1. The G stands for gap, so you can think of it as like gap 1. And the idea is that this is the growth phase. This is where our baby cell is going to grow up to be a little adult cell or mature cell. But basically, it's going to grow up and it's going to start to do its job. Okay, so whatever type of cell it is, whether it's a skin cell or a liver cell or a kidney cell, whatever its job is, it's going to grow up and do its job. Okay, so it's going to add organelles, it's going to make proteins, and all those fancy things that cells can do. All right, then when it's getting ready to start thinking about reproducing or dividing and creating new cells again, it will go through an S phase. Now, S stands for synthesis. Synthesis means to make, or to in this case, copy. So DNA is going to be copied or synthesized. Another word for this would be replicated, because we've talked about DNA replication, and that's exactly what happens here. We go through DNA replication to prepare for division, because each of the new cells that we create needs to have a complete set of DNA. Before S phase, you only have one set of DNA in the cell. After S phase, you have two sets. Then you go into gap 2, or G2. This is the time when the cell is going to prepare for division. It's going to do things like assemble the spindle apparatus, which we'll talk about soon, but it's going to basically prepare. It's going to get things in order so that when it's time to divide, all the pieces are ready to be put into place. Now, there is one optional phase that is not on this list, and it's not on our diagram over here. This optional phase is known as G0, or gap 0. And if it occurs, and it is optional, which means it doesn't always occur, okay, if it occurs right here, after G1. So if a cell chooses to exit the cell cycle, it goes into G0. But once it does that, that's going to prevent further cell division. Okay, so in other words, it will no longer be able to divide, okay, unless it returns to the cell cycle. So think of it as like you're going around this way, you grow up, you become a mature cell, and then you leave and you go to G0. Okay, now a lot of cells that do this, they don't come back, meaning they just stay in G0, they do their job until eventually they get old, worn out, or die. Okay, but there are some cells that will enter G0 for a little bit and then they'll come back and they'll be able to get back into the cell cycle. They may do their job for 6 months, a year, 2 years, and then eventually they come back and divide. Okay, so the idea is that G0 is just the cell's happy doing its job. It's not going to need to divide in the future. One of the classic or standard cells that we talk about when we talk about G0 is a nerve cell. Nerve cells enter G0 and they don't come back. So they won't do this return to the cell cycle to divide. They cannot divide, which means also you can't repair damage to nerves. So once a nerve is damaged, cut, severed, etc., it won't divide to repair itself. It's different from skin. Skin, on the other hand, stays within this cycle. So if you cut your skin, you scrape your skin, it will divide to repair itself. But nerve cells, you damage those, they're not in the cell cycle right now. They're over here in G0. They will not go back to repair themselves. Okay, so that's the cell cycle.